My name is Vince Petrecca, Vice President at PreVeil, covering sales, customer success, and partnerships. And joining me today is...
Hi, I'm Noël Vestal. I'm the compliance officer here at PreVeil. I manage everything compliance, our own internal compliance, and also helping all of our customers with their compliance journeys as well.
Very good. And behind the scenes is Orly Burloff, one of our senior marketing directors, and she's kind of orchestrating things. But thanks for joining us today. We're going to focus today on PreVeil's 10 steps to compliance, CMMC compliance. But we're not just going to do that. We're going to cover a little bit more about kind of the overall compliance journey and what it means to, work with PreVeil to accelerate your path to CMMC compliance. So I'll cover some material. I'll turn over to Noël for her to do a deep dive into what we call our compliance accelerator, which is your tool that will really help you accelerate your path to full NIST CMMC compliance. And then we'll come back, wrap up with a few thoughts on my side. Then we'll do Q&A. As soon as that's over, we'll close this down. Okay, so I used the title here, Cut Costs, Not Corners. And, with compliance, especially CMMC compliance, you really can't cut corners. There's a specific set of controls that you have to meet. The DoD and the C3POs that are assessing these controls are pretty specific about what you have to do to meet these requirements. But you can cut costs. And the cost is not just money spent, but it's time spent. So saving time and money is what this is all about. We really want to help you understand how you can get to full CMMC compliance without some of the expenses and the time spent that you'd have with going down other paths. So let's focus on that for our session today. So first, we're going to talk about the latest CMMC timeline. Then we're going to go a little bit into PreVeil's platform, not very deep at all. We're going to do a dive into the 10 steps to compliance using PreVeil's compliance accelerator. And then I want to wrap up with a little more insights into PreVeil's partner program and how that can help you as well as you're on your path. And then finally, we'll do that Q&A. Okay, we've updated this timeline a few times over the last couple of years. As you can imagine, as the CMMC progress has gone forward. Let me turn over to Noël, who's our Chief Compliance Officer, to just explain the latest, where we are with CMMC today.
Absolutely, happy to. So like Vince said, we've changed this timeline quite a few times in the past few years. So I'm sure any of you who are on the call right now who've been sort of plugged into the CMMC journey over the past 5 or 6 years definitely understands the roller coaster that it has been. However, now, as of the 16th of December, 2024, the CMMC final rule is live. It is effective. It was referred to, you see here, 32 CFR was the title of it. So it became effective in December. That means that as of, I believe, the 3rd of January this year, all those C3POs who've been out there chomping at the bit to do these assessments are starting to do them. So there are a lot of assessments that are happening. I know that we have multiple customers who are going through assessments this month, next month, and in the coming months this year. So what does that mean for you? Well, from a timeline standpoint, there currently, according to the final rule and what DoD has come out with, there is no requirement right now to get a CMMC assessment. However, there is going to be. So this is something that we make a very big point on. You want to make sure that you get that stuff in line now and you are getting everything ready to get that assessment as soon as you possibly can. First of all, there's going to be contracts coming out with this requirement sometime this year. We don't know which contracts those will be. I think the DoD identified like 150 some odd that are going to come out. We're not sure what those are yet. And those supply chain members are also going to have to be CMMC certified as well. So this is now live and a real thing. So if you've been putting this off or thinking maybe this doesn't apply to you, it very much does, and it is live. You'll see here that we have the Title 48 rule. And if you've never heard of that, I'll go into it really, really briefly. Title 48 is just the mechanism to be able to put the final rule into contracts. It's something internal administration-wise for the government so that those different government contract officials can actually have the legal authority to put that into contracts. Once that comes out, that's when our phase 1 timeline starts, and then phase 2 starts a year after that. So this is a very fast-moving train. So if you are not familiar with those different timelines and the different information, please make sure to contact someone. If you are a PreVeil customer, definitely reach out to us. You can also reach out to sales for more information on that. If you're interested and you're not a customer, that we're happy to help and guide you in the right direction.
Very good, Noël. And also, of course, just as a reminder, CMMC program is the assessment component of NIST 800-171, which has been around for quite a while. So maybe just reiterating, Noel, the importance of ensuring that you're on a path to addressing the NIST 80171 controls.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. So DFAR 7012 or 7012, if you have a 7012 clause in your contract, or if you are supporting someone like a subcontractor that has that in their contract, you are responsible today to be doing NIST 80171, which is, like Vince just said, that's the actual framework is NIST 80171. CMMC is just validation. It's a certification program of NIST 80171. So this has been in contracts starting December 31st of 2017. That's a very long time. That's been a requirement. So yes, please be sure that you are making this the number one priority if you have not started your compliance journey already.
Very good. Thanks, Noel. And then, just to remind people, because I still can't believe it's already 2025, but it is 2025. And so we say mid 2025, that's this year, not next year. Okay, so then just an overview of PreVeil's overall solution and what it brings to our customers. Again, we have now over 1,500 enterprise customers in the U.S. that are defense contractors using PreVeil for their NIST CMMC compliance. And what they're employing are three different key aspects of our solution. One is our platform itself. PreVeil's encrypted email file storage and sharing program. That platform that exists, operates in AWS. We do all of our data storage, encrypted data storage in AWS GovCloud. We are fully FedRAMP certified. We meet the DFAR C through G incident response and media preservation requirements. Our encryption algorithms are fully FIPS 140-2 validated. We're already in the process of working on our FIPS 140-3 validation, which we'll have in the next 12 months. And then we're also meeting all the ITAR compliance requirements at the State Department. So with PreVeil, you can meet all of these requirements with one platform. In addition, PreVeil is going to help you meet 102 of the 110 controls. So we're providing some support for all of those, which really gets you a leg up as you go through this process. Now, Noelle and her team over the last few years have developed a very advanced compliance solution. We call it now our compliance accelerator, and that's in the middle column here. This is not only a full set of pre-filled documentation for you based on a sample company. So these are not just templates. This is actually pre-filled content, all of the SSP, the policies, standard operating procedures, diagrams. It's all in there. You're going to have access to all of that through our learning management system. This is what Noelle's going to dive into for you today. And note that that's going to help you address all 110 of the 110 controls, even the ones that the PreVeil platform doesn't even partially address. We're going to help you address all of those requirements with our compliance accelerator. And then you'll need help as you go through the process from third parties. You'll definitely need an assessor to do your assessment at some point. PreVeil has a number of those in our preferred partner network. I think we have almost 25 of those now, including the largest ones. And then we also have a large number of registered practitioners who can do advising for you on your CMMC journey, help you create custom documentation as you need it, help you address any thorny spots as you go through the CMMC process. And we also have managed service providers. So if you want to outsource portions of this process, some of the work that needs to be done, any of the specific tasks that are part of this, you can look to do that with our experienced and trained partners as well. So we'll go into that a little bit more later. Again, PreVeil Email and Drive, if you're not familiar with it, it is a fully capable, fully FedRAMP and CMMC compliant encrypted email and drive platform. The drive provides for a minimum of 10 terabytes of storage, encrypted storage. That's going to be in the AWS GovCloud. You're going to have a view of PreVeil Drive in a browser view right on your user devices. You can also optionally sync that to File Explorer if you wish to work out of File Explorer. We'll keep everything synced with the content that's encrypted in the AWS GovCloud. PreVeil Email is also available. That can be used in the browser view as well, or we can integrate into your Outlook. So if you want to have PreVeil fully integrated into Outlook, makes it really easy to use for your emails that will contain CY or ITAR. Note that, again, these applications meet all the requirements that have been put forth by the DoD, and we've been PC Magazine Editor's Choice for now 5 years in a row for our solution. Okay, now we want to get to the compliance accelerator in PreVeil's 10 steps to compliance. So again, Noelle's going to show you the details here, but just to set it up, right? This is a documentation set. It's a set of videos. It's all put together in a learning management system where you actually go through 10 courses, 10 steps to complete this. So we're going to take you and help you step by step through that process with all the content that you need to be successful here in this process. That's going to include a fully completed system security plan, a template for your POAMs, kind of the standard operating procedures, etc. So you get a firsthand view of this in just a minute. And again, the 10-step journey. Behind this is really a lot of thought that went into exactly what are the steps that you need to go through, what's the order of those steps that make the most sense. And Noël and her team have gone through this 10-step process with our C3PAO partners. We didn't just do this in a bubble. We did this in concert with our partners that are authorized C3PAOs so that we really got feedback as to what was the smartest way to do this, what would save the most time, and what was most likely to enable our customers to be able to get through their assessment successfully with a 110 of 110 score. So I won't go all through these steps individually right now. Noël will touch on them some in her demonstration as well. But again, with the PreVeil partner community, at any point in time, you get stuck here, you'll have access to PreVeil's compliance team. You'll have access to PreVeil certified partner network for our advisors or our registered practitioners out there. That's always available for you too. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Noël for the next step. And this was just deep dive into that compliance accelerator.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vince. Thanks for that setup.
Yep.
So just like Vince said, we're just going to hop right into it. I'm not going to go through all 10 of the steps, but what I am going to do is kind of look at some of the really most impactful ones, the ones that we've gotten feedback from customers that, these are the ones that really just are so amazing and so just life-changing when it comes to their compliance journey. So you'll see that we have some extra steps here too as well, just like, for example, what Vince was talking about. How do I know that I need a consultant? That is something that we get questions from customers all the time about that. There is an entire dedicated course that you can go into. Each one of these courses has a video attached to it. There's also going to be, copies of documentation. This one is pretty straightforward, as you see. So let's dive into some that are a little bit more focused on actual compliance. So the first step here is scoping your boundary. This is the most important step you will take in your compliance journey. I cannot say that enough. I'll say it 100 more times if that's what it takes. This is the most important step you're going to take. And the reason for that, and we go into this in much more detail with the video here and the documentation here. There's also the copy of the slides that you can download as well. Scoping your boundary is the most important thing because this sets up what you're going to be doing in all the other 10 steps. Like all the other steps that you have are all based on whatever that boundary is that you scope. So this is really, really important piece. So you'll see I mentioned that there's a document for each one of these. When you open the document, it'll give you an overview of some qualifying steps. We were just talking about 7012, gives you some information there. Also, each of these documents gives you an idea of a level of effort. So based on high, medium, or low level of effort, and you decide that, where do you think your company is? And then you get an estimate of hours based on low, medium, high. This is only an estimate. It could take less time, more time. It just depends. But at least it gives you some border, just a basic understanding of how long that might take. It talks all through how to scope your boundary, different questions to ask yourself, what to think about, where is CUI in your organization, etc. And you can go through all of these and answer them and have a way better understanding of where your boundary actually is. So outside of scoping your boundary, well, we also have familiarizing yourself with NIST, which is essential, doing a self-assessment, creating POAMs. That was something that Vince was just mentioning. If you are creating POAMs, those are plans of actions and milestones, things that you need to get done that maybe you haven't fully implemented yet. We have a POAM template listed right here that Vince was just chatting about. These are all the controls and objectives that PreVeil does not cover in some way, meaning we don't have a shared responsibility inherited, something like that. Those are all listed here with examples of how you might be able to address those. So that's already listed. You can also add and subtract things here. Maybe some of these things you already have in place, you can get rid of them. So they're all made in Microsoft Word or Excel or something where you can actually edit all of these. So now let's go into, let's be honest, this is the bear for most people. It's the documentation piece. I know that it was for me when I implemented these controls. This was the one that took the most time. So documentation is the largest course that we have. Again, it's the same situation with the video, document slides, etc. You'll see our shared responsibility matrix is here. And this is where the system security plan is. So that was something that Vince had just spoken about. So this is just an example control. For example, this is a control that PreVeil does not cover. So controlling information posted or processed on publicly accessible information systems. That's like your website, your social media. Obviously, we have nothing to do with who posts and doesn't post information on whatever accounts you have. However, as you notice here, and like just what Vince was saying, we still have a full, complete process and policy that is already listed in here. You can use it as is, you can adjust it as needed, whatever you need to do. And you'll see here it even says this is out of scope of PreVeil, but we still answer it anyway. Each one of these, you'll see that there's a section that's, either in bold and italicized. It'll tell you what objective you're addressing there. It'll also ask you to insert things in different places, or hey, have you thought about this or thought about that? So this is about 50–60% of the way filled out with this boilerplate language you see here that isn't in bold and italicized. And then everything that's here for the PreVeil user is already done for you. All the PreVeil information is just done. So you can just leave it as is. If there's something that you need to add or subtract, you can. But really, most of our customers don't even touch that information. But the rest of it, obviously, if any other systems outside of PreVeil, you put that information here. The other thing that's really amazing about the documentation course is not only do we have videos on every one of the families. So if you have any misunderstandings about access control, hey, what does that really even mean? And I don't understand what that means in the context of CMMC. If you need a bit more walkthrough of here's how those different documents interact with what you're actually having to do for access control or awareness and training or any of the families, these are amazing videos for that. They also have interviews with C3PAOs, those certified partners that Vince was talking about. We have interviews with those C3PAOs at the end of each of these videos telling you like lessons learned, things they've seen that people have not really done great, things that people have done great. So that is invaluable information. And here we have our procedural documentation. You can tell this is a very long one. I'm still not quite done. So this is the bottom of it. I believe there's 65 now or something along those lines of these. These are our standard operating procedures. So the question that we got from customers for years was, okay, great, I have an SSP, I have a POAM. What else do I need? Is there more documentation? And the answer is yes, there is. There's actually a lot of documentation because think about a policy can now be listed in your SSP. A policy is this is what we're going to do. A procedure is how are we doing it? The how are we doing it, as we all know, takes way more time to document than what we're doing. So what we went ahead and did is created an example company, something that we thought was a pretty average example of a small DIB contractor, 5 employees that are really working with CY, others that are doing staff augmentation at, some military location or what have you. And then we just created everything we could think of from an artifact standpoint, from those procedural, those supporting documentation standpoint. We created everything we could think of for that company. This company is a Microsoft commercial shop and uses PreVeil just as an overarching. So when you go inside of it, you'll see, I doubt that anybody's address is 123 Main Street, Springfield, USA, but maybe HR@company.com is your HR email, but doubtful. So there are things that you will obviously need to change and update. However, this goes into all of the different controls that are all of the different controls that are within the access control family and gives you full procedures for everything. Controlling CUI flow, for example, that is something that you say in the SSP, yep, we're going to control CUI flow. We're going to use all these different technologies to do at the end. This is the actual procedure. Well, what happens if there's CUI spillage? What happens if CUI goes to somebody it's not supposed to? That is part of controlling that flow. So that's the level of detail that these documents go into. The other thing that's really nice, and I'm not trying to make anybody dizzy, the other thing that's really nice about these is that at the very end, you also have, gosh, I forget how long these are. At the very end, you have a signature page. This can actually be used in support of your awareness and training. So if you see here, I will be responsible for signing this letter annually as a continued commitment to this. You get your employees who are dealing with CUI to sign this. They sign all 14 of them, one for every family. That can be used as an artifact and evidence for the C3PO when it comes to awareness and training. So there's a lot of interconnection with all of these different documents as well. You'll see, here is that CUI after action spillage report that we were just referencing in the other document. It's already created for you here. So you'll see a lot of different documents that are referenced in the standard operating procedures. And then you'll see all of them right here. So you actually have examples of what those look like. Same thing for awareness and training. We even have 2 videos for awareness and training that you can use for insider threat and role-based training. We have, and also the thing that's really cool about this is that customers are constantly giving us feedback. They're always saying, hey, what about this? And have you thought about that? One of the things that I had a customer ask me to do a few weeks ago was, you know what, I'd really like a questionnaire for my subcontractors because I'm the prime and I'm responsible for them making sure that they're CMMC compliant. How am I going to do that? I don't want to, look at their whole SSP. This is too much work. So we made a very simple, straightforward document that they can keep a hold of to make sure that they've covered themselves if anybody comes knocking saying, hey, is this specific subcontractor not compliant? So it's not even just the stuff that you actually need for compliance. It's even additional things that are just really nice to have as well. We also go into, at the very last part, you'll see here. So this is a readiness assessment and gap assessment. These are really important steps that I don't want to skip over. You want to make sure you're actually ready for the, do yourself another self-assessment, make sure you're good. And then you get to that final assessment standpoint. And that's where those C3PAOs come into. And that's where the partner network is absolutely essential. Because if you can work with a C3PAO partner of ours, you're going to have a much better outcome. We have definitely seen that. We've had quite a few customers now go through assessments, and the difference between going through a partnered assessment, a C3PAO that understands how PreVeil works and works with us, and one that doesn't is very dramatic. There's definitely a difference. So we have information here on where to get those recommendations and how to get those recommendations. There it is.
It's such an incredible resource, Noel. I mean, really, our whole goal from the start was not just to provide a platform that would support the storage and handling of CUI and ITAR in a manner that met the requirements, but to really provide a path for our customers to compliance, to really help them get where they wanted to be, which was ultimately a 110 and a 110, perfect score in their compliance that then they can maintain going forward in a very manageable fashion. And I think with what, you and the team have done here, you've really created that, not just the backbone, but the entire, body of what you need here, which is really impressive. And of course, aspects of it will need to be customized for a specific defense contractor. But for some of our customers that have gone through the C3PAO and DIBCAC assessment processes, they've been able to use many of these documents almost exactly as they are and pass their assessment. So
Absolutely true. We in fact had a customer who went through an assessment about a week and a half ago who told us that they used all of this documentation and their assessment was 2.5 days instead of 5. They said that DIBCAC was so impressed with how they were so prepared and ready to go, and it was really great. So I'm not saying that it was our documentation that did that. I'm just saying, it's helpful.
Right. And, one more thing, you were mentioning continuous, improvement on this set of documentation on the LMS tool that we provided here. I'm aware that we're currently working on actually finalizing a new course in the program specific to management of endpoints that will be in scope for an organization. There's been a lot of, I would say, mystery around what's required for our customers on this, and
Good way of putting it. Yeah.
a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out in the marketplace that you can't, you may not be able to handle this, et cetera, et cetera. We've always believed that this is something many of our customers can handle themselves. And so what we wanted to do was put down the process for a typical customer that uses Microsoft 365 for commercial, who adds PreVeil to that, and what they need to do to, just by following directions, essentially put themselves in a situation where they can make their endpoints compliant. Do you want to just share a little color on that? I know it's coming out soon. But
It is. Yeah. Like you said, I am finalizing it right now, getting the whole course together and, creating the videos and everything else that goes with it. But yes, so we went through and actually did documentation, sort of a step-by-step. Hey, these are the things you need to look at. Here are the different items on your endpoint that you need to have solutions for, like vulnerability scanning, multi-factor authentication, that SIEM, antivirus, there's a bunch of them. And we actually went through and said, okay, well, here are the licensing. If you have Microsoft 365 commercial, here are the licenses that you need to have to do this. Okay, well, which product is going to work? Well, here's this product from Microsoft, but also here's some others that you could use as well. And then for the Microsoft ones, we actually created a documentation of sort of walking you through step by step with the screenshots. And of course, I'm sure Microsoft will change everything, the minute that I come out with this. But as of right now, the way that it looks, internally into if you're in a Microsoft instance and walking you through, okay, this is where you need to click here. This is where you need to click there, sort of demystifying a lot of, like you said, that mystery that is around endpoint compliance. As somebody who's done this myself, I mean, I have obviously an IT background, but even still, I had never managed a Microsoft instance before. I had no idea how to do that when I was implementing CMMC. So I had to figure out a lot of this stuff on my own. So I'm so glad that we now get to share it with everyone, so nobody else has to go through the head banging that I did when I was setting this up.
Very good. Well, very excited about that. I know a lot of our existing customers are looking forward to that. But for anyone that's, considering what platform and what company to go with, again, the PreVeil platform, our learning management system around the compliance journey, including some of these enhancements that are coming in every month from Noël and team, are really valuable for helping you get there.
Definitely.
All right, let me just wrap up with a couple more quick things, and then we'll go to the Q&A session here. So thanks for that overview of the 10 steps. Just a little more on the preferred partner network trail. Again, we're demystifying this as well. If you want to see our partner network, it's on our website. You can go to our partner tab, click on the partner network. You can look at assessors. You can look at managed service providers. You can look at advisors. Those are the RPOs. So you can look at who we've got, maybe see if there's one near you. We're adding 5 or 10 more to this portal every month. So we have a whole partner team that's working on vetting, training these folks, making sure they're familiar with our documentation, making sure they understand the PreVeil security model and how we've helped customers move through this process. And, again, I just can't emphasize enough. This is a proven solution for saving money and time on your path to CMMC compliance. We've had 15 defense contractors and actual C3PAOs that are using PreVeil for their own compliance that have used us for perfect 110 scores in DoD assessments. And the estimate we have across the board, and we asked each of our customers how much they believe they saved versus alternatives they considered, is $75,000 per customer, what they saved versus the alternatives that were available to them from a platform perspective and a compliance tool perspective. So we really can make a big difference in your budget and how you approach this. But maybe even more important is we're going to save you a lot of time. And that time you save will allow you to actually run your business and do what you need to do every day to make your business successful, and only spend the time you must on this compliance journey, because we know this is not something that you want to spend any more time than you need to on. Got to just, put our little commercial here on Noël and her team can be reached at compliance@preveil.com. My team can reach at sales@preveil.com. If you're not already connected to someone at PreVeil and you'd like to be, please reach out to us. We'll get back to you at either one of these email addresses. We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to at least educate you more on what PreVeil can do to help you get started on this path as quickly as possible and get there with the least amount of pain. So with that, I think we're ready to go to Q&A. Orly, I don't know if we've seen what we've seen come in.
Yeah. Hey, Vince, Noel, great job. Why don't we start on some of the Q&A? All right. So there's a question here. One of the requirements is background checks for CMMC Level 2 compliance. Do security clearances count? Do they have to be within a year? Usually a security clearance requires a background check and a credit report.
It sure does. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer this one. Absolutely. So CMMC does require some kind of background check, but it doesn't specify how you decide to do that. So it's very much left up to you as the organization. If you want to use, I personally, when I went through this, did exactly that. Everybody who was dealing with CUI just happened to have clearances from the DoD anyway. So I just went ahead and said, okay, great. I'm not going to do extra background checks. They've already been done. And you can absolutely do it that way. If you don't have those people with clearances, that's fine too. You could make it where you have clearances, the people that do have clearances, great. If they don't, there's an alternative that you have, whatever your background check you decide it is. As long as it's something, as long as it is actually an official background check and you can make sure that you have, proof that you did it, it doesn't really matter how you do it or what level it you go to from a CMMC perspective.
All right. And I just to generalize, Noel, my understanding is that's true of many of the controls, right? They're not always going to dictate exactly how you need to do it. They're going to give you the requirement and allow you some latitude for how you wish to take it. You just have to show that you're doing it, and you have to have the artifacts to show that it actually was done. That's the maturity portion of CMMC.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. So CMMC is what's called non-prescriptive, meaning they're not going to tell you exactly what solution to use. They're not going to tell you exactly how to do something, but they are going to tell you what you need to do. So that's a perfect way of saying it, Vince. So I'm glad you brought that up. And that is true for the entirety of CMMC.
So is there like a freshness date? Does that background check have to be like within a year or 2 years, 7 years?
Up to the organization. So the organization gets to decide the frequency, if it's, but you do have to have a policy that does have those years, but it's up to you to decide if it's, a lot of different companies will have tiers where, for example, like if they're in a higher sensitivity level job, maybe it'll be every 3 years they do it. If they're in a low priority job, maybe it's every 5 years, but that's just an example. It really is completely up to you.
Got it. All right, let's move on. So CMMC is only required if you're handling CUI. Correct. How do you know if a contract is going to include CUI? I mean, this is a question we heard, but
All the time.
never be repeated enough. I guess repetition doesn't hurt the prayer.
100%. Well, one thing to say that I'll say here is if your RFP or RFI has CUI label on it,
Request for information.
thank you. If those two, if you are responding to something from the government and a proposal, if that if that RFI, request for proposal or information or proposal, has CUI marked on it, you can probably bet that there's going to be CUI in the contract, most likely. In fact, there's more and more RFPs and RFIs that are coming out as they themselves CUI. Technically speaking, it's supposed to be listed in your contract, if you have CUI and what types. The DoD struggles a lot with really identifying the CUI that they're going to have in contracts, and they know that they struggle with this. So we usually give the overarching statement that yes, it should be in your contract. If it isn't, and if you have information that is sensitive by itself or in tandem with other information that you have, where if it fell out of your hands into, some nefarious bad actors' hands, if it could cause any sort of harm to the U.S. national security, just go ahead and treat it like CUI. Obviously, if it's labeled CUI, then, you have to treat it that way as well. But from a contract standpoint, one of the only ways you can maybe kind of possibly tell that there might be CUI in the contract itself is if that RFI or RFP is CUI itself. That's probably a good indicator. But also, if that's not consistent either. So unfortunately, with the DoD, the CUI stuff is a struggle that they are still having, and they have been sort of trying to get better about this for the past 10 years. It's just a very slow process.
Oh, I mean, I would expect they will, Noel, right? There's nothing like the actual law, the actual rules coming through the system to drive that. And I would expect by later this year, there'll be a much more, in line with what they should be doing around CUI marking, around notifications and RFPs, RFQs, et cetera. So I think we can expect that to visibly change in the next 12 months out there. What I would like to add, though, is that, for the audience here, we do have customers that do not have CUI today, right? And yet they want to be prepared in case something comes, or they want to be able to compete for proposals where there might be CUI going into the future. And PreVeil is an excellent way to do that. With PreVeil, we have a PreVeil Pass option where we can get a few licenses. You can have the DFARS compliant environment to store any content that would come in. You'll have the SSP, System Security Plan, that you can quickly customize for yourself and then use as the basis for an upgraded SPRS score, the Supplier Risk Management score that is required. So you can have that updated. You've now got your POAM. You're right on the path very quickly to CMMC, even if you don't want to go all the way there yet. So that's not uncommon, and don't feel like you're going to be out of step with the rest of the market. If you say, well, I don't have CUI, I'm not going to do anything. If you see a future where you will have CUI, get started now and put yourself in a position to handle that.
One last question, and thank you for that perspective, Vince. So this last question, I'm going to do a little interpretation because it's a little unclear from the language, but this person is asking, when a client modifies a procedure, what is the process to store this document and where it is stored?
I do understand this question.
Okay.
I get this question a lot, actually. So remember, it's all about CUI, right? So if your POAM that you're, tracking the different controls that you're implementing has CUI in it for whatever reason, then you're going to need to make sure that it is secured compliantly as CUI is. Most people's POAMs do not have CUI in it. Most people's SSPs do not have CUI in it. Most people's procedural documentation doesn't have CUI in it. I'm just making that statement. If for some reason any of those documents do have CUI in them, then you need to store them for example, in PreVeil or some compliance solution. If they don't, it's very much up to you how you manage and store them. Because again, CMMC is all about where CUI is flowing through and around your organization. If there's no CUI in those documents, those become those supporting documents to support your boundary and obviously to give your assessor so they can see and validate that you've done all the things you're supposed to do to keep CUI safe. But again, if there's no CUI in it itself, it can be stored wherever makes the most sense for you.
Orly, I've got one more question I want to add.
All right.
Noel, if I'm a PreVeil customer and I've purchased not just the PreVeil platform, but the compliance accelerator and have access to that, and I have a question around the accelerator, a specific control, how it fits my organization. Can I do this? Have you seen this be successful? What can I do?
Such a good question. So there's a couple of things you can do. One, you can send us an email at compliance@preveil.com. We're happy to answer those questions. But maybe it's one that's a little more complicated and you need a little bit more time. I'll just show it real quick when we're back on the accelerator. And this additional compliance resources, there is a link right here. Schedule a 30-minute compliance call with the PreVeil compliance team. See, we've got openings up for the rest of the week, and you can pick a 30-minute time block and meet with a member of our compliance team to talk about all those things. We like to say that we're a good sanity check. If you're not sure of what you're doing, we're here to help.
Yeah, no, excellent. It's really,
And talk to Noel.
it's a unique resource that's available as part of our offering. I'm not sure that anyone else offers something like this in addition to the overall plan. Like, we are here to help make sure that our customers are on path, stay on track for compliance. This isn't just a sell a platform and move on. We're with you through this whole process, and that's why we like it. And I think that's why we're going to be very successful with our customer base in this space.
And that also includes assessment support as well. So when you're going through that assessment, we're also here to bounce ideas off during that as well. And we have many customers who have done that when they go through their assessments, which I also think is another thing that's very unique. I don't know of other partners who are doing that either. Yeah.
Very good. That's it, Orla.
Some last minute questions, and we probably have about another 4 minutes. So why don't we answer these? All right. So clients should use a GRC service or tool for central tracking. I think that's a question. Should customers use a GRC service or tool for central tracking?
Again, this goes back to non-prescriptive. It's totally up to you. If that's something that works, great. We have definitely seen a lot of success with customers who are using GRC tracking tools because they can be super easy places to just keep all of it. As you saw when we were looking through Accelerator, it's a lot of documentation to keep straight. So the GRC can be a really wonderful place and way to do that. That's kind of easy. Again, as long as there's no CUI in any of those things, you absolutely can use whatever GRC tool you want. Again, you don't have to, but definitely can be really helpful.
Right. And I'll just add from dealing directly with customers on this is that if you're running a simpler architecture for your business and you're going to maintain all your PreVeil, your CUI within PreVeil system, and you pretty much fit the model of the sample company that we've built all our documentation on, I'd say that probably there isn't as much value to the GRC. You'll be able to use the content we provided. If you want, create a drive folder in PreVeil Drive, keep it all in there, keep your updates in there. I think that's manageable. If you have different systems, if your ERP system, it needs to be CUI enabled. If you're using, content in the cloud, you're doing software development in the cloud in a CUI environment. Now you're going to have the controls influenced from multiple systems. It's going to be easier if you have a more centralized GRC type repository that can consolidate that as you go through the process. So just based on experience I've got working with our customer base.
Right. Thank you for that, Vince. One last question. It says, where do you guys see MSPs when it comes to CMMC and FedRAMP, since they're not often directly contracted with the government?
Yeah, so MSPs, that's been the question of the day for the past month or so since the final rule came out. So the proposed rule had a very, very strict designation for any managed service provider. They had to be CMMC certified, full stop, and a discussion. Now there's a bit more wiggle room. So if you are a managed service provider and you're supporting your customers, but you are not directly part of that CUI boundary, meaning you're not remoting into CUI assets and looking at CUI, or, you're not dealing with security protection data being stored within your environment, that's on behalf of your customers. If you're not doing that type of stuff, then you really don't have any requirements from a certification standpoint, but you will be part of the assessment for your customer. So, again, as long as you're supporting their CUI boundary in some way, You will be in some way, depending on what controls. Obviously, it depends on what you're offering to that customer, which controls you're going to be brought in on or not. You'd be considered part of their what we call the OSC, or the Organization Seeking Certifications Compliance Boundary, and you would be part of that assessment. But again, it would be limited to those different items, those different controls that directly applied to whatever solution you were offering your customer. I know that's kind of weird. Now, there have been a lot of MSPs out there who do have more, defense contracting work, and they're going, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and get CMMC certified. It's not worth it. Like, I'm just doing it, which I also understand, because then you can just give that certification to your customers when they get their assessment done, just like we do with FedRAMP. And then it's, hey, we just move on. But it's very much up to each MSP now, since we don't have that hard, fast rule anymore.
Sure.
It's a business decision.
It is very much so. Yep.
You have anything to add to this, Vince?
Not that one. Noel said it well.
All right. Wonderful. Well, you guys have been great. Thank you, Vince and Noel, for being wonderful hosts. And thank you to our audience for their questions and their attention. We will be in touch. All right.
Yeah. See you next time. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody.